in the assessments we do of sales organizations and salespeople and sales managers, one of the things we look for is an individual's willingness to be successful in selling. There's a big difference between can you sell and will you sell. There's a big difference between can you present and close versus will you present and close. All right, so write this down. This is significant to your business, that helps drive and helps you become more successful at the money discussion, to overcome objections and deal with questions and deal with stalls. It ties in together. Okay, the will to be successful consists of, number one, your desire to be successful in this particular aspect, in this particular venture. Time and time again, we have seen salespeople who have a strong desire to be successful but still fail at selling. And the reason being is they don't have the desire to be successful in selling. Selling is a very unique animal. Nobody else in any company has to face as much rejection as a salesperson. Nobody has as much pressure to perform in an organization as a salesperson. No segment in the organization has as much scrutiny, except for maybe legal and compliance, in terms of someone peeking over their shoulder every day wanting to know, what did you do today? What did you do today? What did you do today? It's a unique animal. And if you don't have desire to be successful at that, you will fail as a salesperson. So you got to have desire. Number two, commitment. And I heard some pretty good examples of it here. Write this down. Commitment is defined as willing to do everything possible to succeed. Everything possible to succeed, assuming excuse me, ethical, legal, and moral standards. Now, I'm reading a Belichick biography, not authorized by Bill Belichick, and I don't subscribe to his belief about this, but he says something to the effect of, if you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough. And Bill has had his share of scandals in his coaching history. The third thing is taking responsibility. The short definition of that is no excuses. You take the blame for failures and you share the successes with others. But you can't make excuses. You can't blame somebody. And the fourth thing is outlook. How do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about the economy? How do you feel about competition? Those things drive your will. And if you have a strong will to succeed, you will have no problem asking for the investment when it's time to ask for the investment. If you're wavering just a little bit, you're going to run into problems. Getting commitment. And I know I keep saying write this down because this stuff is important, and I'm going to try and give you as much as I can. So write this down. In a sales training session, so Matt, if we were teaching you a sales training session, we were talking about you talking to prospects, okay, and you're selling your product out in the marketplace. What Randy knows, because in our long history, all prospects, what do they do, Randy? Lie. When do they lie?
All the time.
All the time. So write that down, okay? In your case, you're investors, you're funders. And it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It doesn't mean they're trying to be mean. What it means is they're not going to disclose the absolute truth to you. They won't tell you with complete transparency what their process is to make a decision to invest in your company. They won't tell you that they're looking at some other investments at the same time as they're looking at yours. They're not going to have full disclosure. So to put it another way, you need to have healthy skepticism. You need to have healthy skepticism. And if you approach every deal with an element of healthy skepticism, it will drive you to continue to ask more questions that you need to ask to make sure that you have clarity about their willingness. And I know you don't know what this is, so I'm going to tell you right now, because your people are going to have to invest not just money, the M, But oftentimes there is a requirement for time and resources. And sometimes you won't get the partner that you want because writing the check is easy, but maybe there's time and resources required that they're not willing to invest as well. Kind of makes sense? We got it? Mike, we good?
I'm good. I started as a stockbroker on commission, and I've been hung up on so many thousands of times.
Oh.
It is awful.
Yeah, it is. Okay? We're not going to have time today to help you deal with money objections, stalls, and questions. But this is what I will tell you, and I'll ask you to write this down. And I'm just going to focus on, I'll focus on two of them. The objection they raise is never the real objection, so write that down. The objection they raise is never the real objection. And the question they ask is never the real question. So let's just deal with questions. What kind of questions do you anticipate getting from funding partners or prospects or any partner?
Is this really an issue?
What's that?
Is the problem you're solving really an issue?
So let me. So who would ask you that question?
Investor.
Investor. Okay. Randy, would you play investor for us? Because you probably have a better feel for how they might engage in this conversation. All right. So Matt, you got to role play with Randy for a second. Okay. And Matt, what I want you to do is respond to that question the way you normally would. All right. And then we'll talk about maybe how to tweak it a little bit so we can get to the real question. Thank you, Randy. Go ahead.
So Matt, I'm not sure this is a real problem. Is it a real problem?
Yes, according to the UN, EU, FDA, USDA, and everybody else. In government, we've got to reduce consumer food waste by 50% by the year 2020.
Thank you.
All right. Good enough. All right. What question might you get?
Well,
You don't want to dig into that a little more? I mean, there's so much meat there.
Oh, I know, but we'll go back to it. I mean, again, you only gave me an hour, so you know I could spend hours on this.
I think according to Scott and Randy, when I met them, I was a little surprised because the revenue trajectory has to go like that instead of like that.
Yep.
Slowly. I was very surprised of your answer. Well, tell me why.
You want to role play with me now?
Not really.
No. I want to know, what question do you anticipate getting from an investor?
A trajectory going like this.
They want to ask you, what do you?
Fast.
Okay, what will your projection for revenue be?
I believe 5 years about 14 to 20 million.
Okay, so here's what I need for you to write down, and here's your learning list. Okay, always answer a question with a question, and that's not to be tricky, but it's to find. Stacy's shaking her head like, what am I getting into here? Go ahead. No, tell me what you're thinking. It's all right.
It's hard for me when I want to know something and someone asks me a question. I don't know.
That's my immediate response to her. Is I asked her a question when she asked me a question.
And it drives you crazy?
Yes.
Yeah, that's because they don't do it right, and that's okay. You know? So in other words,
So, well, let me play with you.
Sure.
This problem. So you got this compost thing, right?
Yeah,
Is that a real problem?
it may not be.
Huh.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Now, see, what I don't know, because I don't understand your business, I don't know the right question that would cause Randy to begin to discover that it's a problem. Okay?
Can I try one?
Sure.
Like what I said, well, do you have any guess on how many current households in this country are currently composting?
But that's not going to put it's not going to put him in, I mean, to me, that'd be like, who cares?
Okay.
So your question has got to cause someone to say, holy crap. Or I didn't know that. I mean, when you brought up, and if you were to ask me, Tony, if you had to guess, Tony, how many horses were put to death every year because of X, Y, and Z? I'd say, I have no idea. And he said, well, suppose I told you it's north of. I mean, again, because most people are wired, they love horses. okay? And it's going to break their heart. Okay, so in the compost area, in the renting business, in the data business, you got to find that same thing that causes someone to say, I had no freaking idea. Most of you probably didn't know we had 300,000 food-dependent people here in Cincinnati. I've had grown men cry in the room when they talk about, we got to feed the hungry kids in the city. So now you're thinking, okay, so now what's the question?
Can I clarify?
Uh-huh.
Is it, what's better, more of an emotional question or more of a, like, oh, I didn't realize that was a fact question?
Yeah, either one will work. In other words, so, and I don't know the right question, but you know, Randy, so what's the first thing I did when Randy said, I don't see it as a problem? What's the first thing that I did?
You disarmed him.
I disarmed him, okay? And so I said, well, you know, maybe it's not. But this is what I call the magic word. The word is suppose. But suppose I told you that.
Gotcha.
Okay? And now understand, folks, okay? We're off track a little bit. Is that okay?
Keep going.
Okay? First of all, you've got to know your buyer.
Yeah.
Okay? Let's suppose for a second that I wanted to be an investor in lots of different companies. I'm probably going to want to invest in insurance companies, financial advisory companies, and maybe banks. I have, not that I don't have any interest in compost, but that's way off my radar. I don't know anything about it. So I've got to assume for a second that the person you're talking to is geared towards environmental protection and environmental issues. So that when you say to them, well, suppose I told you that, that will cause the right person to have that aha moment. Make sense? Okay, so when you're talking to people about rent, it's got to be the right audience or it's going to be water off a duck's back. They won't care. It's like, I didn't know that. That's interesting. It's just a factoid, right? So again, trying to sound tricky, but because the question they ask is never the real question, your job is to get to the real question. And so when it comes to money, what kind of questions will you get about money?